Don't leave that boy with her. Sarah, she's not safe. The neighbor's warning echoed in my skull. But it was too late. Liam's scream tore through the quiet afternoon, sharp as a blade, slicing my heart in two. I dropped the stack of laundry I'd been folding, the soft cotton slipping through my fingers, and ran toward the kitchen of my sister Jessica's sleek coastal apartment in Astoria, Oregon. My pulse hammered in my ears, each step heavier than the last. What I saw when I burst through the doorway froze me solid. Liam, my 6-year-old, was curled into a ball on the hardwood floor, his tiny arms shielding his face. A bright red welt bloomed across his forearm, angry and raw. Jessica stood over him, her manicured hand gripping a wooden ruler like it was a scepter of her rage. Paint from Liam's art set dripped across the counter, a chaotic splash of blues and reds, like the mess of my life spilling out in front of me. "Jessica," I shouted, my voice cracking. "What are you doing?" She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Her lips curled into that smug half-smile she'd perfected over years of getting her way. "He ruined my kitchen. Sarah threw paint everywhere like a little brat. Someone's got to teach him respect." Her voice was calm, cold, like she was scolding a dog, not my son. Liam whimpered, his small body trembling, and I felt something snap inside me, a dam breaking under the weight of fear and fury. "He's 6, I said, stepping between them, my hands shaking as I pulled Liam into my arms. "It was an accident." Jessica rolled her eyes, tossing the ruler onto the counter with a clatter. "Accident or not, you're too soft on him. Always have been. That's why he's spoiled rotten." She crossed her arms, her designer blouse pristine, untouched by the chaos she'd caused. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she saw the pain in Liam's eyes. But the truth hit me harder than any words could. I was stuck here, in her house, in her world, because I had nowhere else to go. After my divorce, I'd lost everything. My ex drained our accounts, left me with nothing but a rusty Honda Civic and a mountain of legal bills. Jessica offered her guest room in Astoria, this picturesque town on the Oregon coast, with its foggy beaches and quaint coffee shops. I thought it was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild for me and Liam. But now, holding my son as he clung to me, his tears soaking my shirt, I saw it for what it was, a trap. Jessica's home wasn't a haven, it was a cage, and her rules came with a price. I carried Liam to the guest room, his small hands clutching my neck. "I'm sorry." "Mommy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean to make her mad. My throat tightened, and I pressed my lips to his forehead, tasting the salt of his fear. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Mommy's here. I've got you." But as I tucked him into bed, his favorite dinosaur blanket pulled tight. I couldn't ignore the truth. Jessica had crossed a line, and I'd let her get close enough to hurt him. The apartment was silent now, the ocean's distant roar seeping through the open windows. Jessica had retreated to her room, probably sipping wine, acting like nothing happened. I sat on the edge of Liam's bed, watching his chest rise and fall, each breath a reminder of my failure. I'd moved us here to keep him safe, to give him a home after the divorce tore our world apart. But safety. That was a lie. Jessica's anger wasn't new. I'd seen it before her sharp words, her quick hands, the way she'd lashed out at me when we were kids. Back then, our mother, Diane, called it sibling rivalry. Now, it was something darker, something I couldn't ignore. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Ava's number. My best friend, A lawyer back in Portland had warned me about Jessica. She's got a temper, Sarah always has. Be careful. I hadn't listened. I thought I could handle it. Thought I could keep Liam out of her path. But that welt on his arm told a different story. I didn't call Ava. Not yet. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, the shadows of the coastal pines dancing across it, and made a promise. No one would hurt my son again. Not Jessica. Not anyone. But how do you fight when you're broken, and living under someone else's roof? That question kept me awake, gnawing at me, as the first threads of a plan began to form. Liam's soft snores filled the guest room, but sleep wouldn't come for me. His dinosaur blanket rose and fell, a fragile shield against the world I'd dragged him into. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, replaying Jessica's cold smirk, the way that ruler had left its mark on my son's arm. My hands trembled, not just with anger, but with the sickening realization that I'd let this happen. I'd trusted her, trusted this house, and now Liam was paying for my mistake. Morning came too fast, the Oregon fog curling outside Jessica's pristine apartment like a warning. I found her in the kitchen, sipping coffee, her blonde hair pulled into a perfect bun. The counter was spotless, no trace of Liam's paint or the chaos from yesterday. She glanced up, her eyes sharp, like she was sizing me up. "You're up early," she said, voice smooth as glass. "Hope you're not still mad about that little scene. Kids need boundaries. Sarah, you know that." I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. "Boundaries," I said, my voice low, shaking. "You hit my son with a ruler. Jessica, that's not discipline. That's cruel." She set her mug down, slow, deliberate, and leaned forward. "Cruel, please." He was out of control, flinging paint like a wild animal. I did what you're too weak to do. Someone's got to teach him respect, or he'll end up just like his deadbeat dad. Her words cut deep, each one a jab at my failures, my divorce, my desperation. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "He's 6. He made a mess. That's what kids do. You don't get to hurt him because you can't handle a little paint." Jessica laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed off the stainless steel appliances. "Oh, Sarah, spare me the mommy martyr act. You're living in my house, eating my food. If you don't like my rules, there's the door." She pointed toward the front of the apartment, her manicured nail glinting like a threat. I wanted to scream, to shove her words back down her throat. But the truth stopped me cold. She was right. I had nowhere else to go. I drove to my mother Diane's house that afternoon. Liam buckled in the back seat, clutching his sketchbook. Diane lived a few miles away in a gated community, her manicured lawn and white picket fence screaming suburban perfection. I needed her to see what Jessica had done, to take my side, to be the mother I hadn't had in years. But as I sat across from her in her sunlit living room, her iced tea sweating on a coaster, hope crumbled. "Sarah, you're blowing this out of proportion," Diane said, her voice clipped, like she was scolding a child. "Jessica's always had a temper, but she means well. That boy needs a firm hand. You're too soft. Always have been." I stared at her, my chest tightening. A firm hand. "Mom, she left a welt on his arm. She hit him, multiple times. That's not parenting. That's abuse." Diane sighed, adjusting her pearl necklace, her eyes drifting to the window. "Abuse is a strong word." "Honey, Jessica's under stress, running that boutique, trying to keep her life together. And frankly, you're not helping, dragging Liam into her home and letting him run wild." Her words were a slap, sharp and stinging. I leaned forward, voice barely steady. You're defending her after what she did. Diane's gaze hardened. Don't make this a drama. Sarah. Jessica's had her struggles. Did you know she was sued? Once a parent claimed she was too rough with their kid when she was teaching. We handled it, paid them off. She didn't mean any harm then, and she doesn't now. My blood ran cold. Jessica had done this before. And Diane knew you covered it up. I whispered, the room spinning. You let her hurt someone else's child, and now you're letting her hurt mine. Diane stood, smoothing her skirt. You're being hysterical. Go home. Sarah, talk to your sister. Work it out. Family doesn't turn on family. I wanted to scream that this wasn't family, that family didn't leave bruises on a 6-year-old's skin. But her face, so calm, so certain, told me she'd never listen. I left, Liam's hand in mine, his silence louder than any words. That night, back in Jessica's guest room, Liam woke up crying, his small body shaking. Mommy, I don't want to stay here, he sobbed, clutching his sketchbook like a lifeline. Cousin Jessica scares me. Please, can we go? I pulled him close, his tears soaking my shirt, and felt my heart break all over again. I know, baby, I whispered, stroking his hair. We're gonna be okay. I promise. But as I held him, the weight of our situation crushed me. No money, no home, no one to turn to. Jessica's threat, there's the door, loomed like a guillotine. And Diane's betrayal, her willingness to protect Jessica over Liam, burned like acid in my veins. I thought of Ava, my friend in Portland, her warnings about Jessica's temper. I thought of the neighbor's words. She's not safe. I'd ignored them all, desperate for a roof over our heads. But Liam's fear, his trembling voice, was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Jessica wasn't just a bully. She was dangerous. And Diane, she'd rather save face than save her grandson. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the ocean's roar outside a constant reminder of how small I felt. But somewhere in that darkness, a spark ignited. I wouldn't let this break us. Not Liam. Not me. We deserved better. And I'd fight for it, no matter what it cost. The moonlight spilled through the guest room's blinds, casting jagged shadows across Liam's sleeping face. His sketchbook lay open on the pillow, a half-finished drawing of a lighthouse, smudged with his tiny fingerprints. I sat beside him, my hand still trembling from Jessica's words. Diane's betrayal. The weight of knowing I'd let my son down. I couldn't stay here, not in this apartment where every creak of the floor felt like a threat. But leaving that was a leap into the unknown, with $400 in my account and a car that coughed more than it ran. Still, Liam's quiet sobs from last night echoed in my chest. I had to get us out. Now. I moved like a thief in the dark, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag, Liam's dinosaur pajamas, my worn jeans, a couple of his favorite markers. I tucked his sketchbook under my arm, its weight a reminder of his dreams, the ones I swore I'd protect. By dawn, I'd crammed everything into 3 garbage bags and a laundry basket, all I could fit in the Civic's trunk. Liam stirred as I buckled him into the back seat, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Where we going, Mommy?" he mumbled, clutching his stuffed triceratops. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Somewhere safe. Baby, just you and me." He nodded, trusting me, and that trust cut deeper than any fear. I drove through Astoria's foggy streets, the Pacific Ocean a gray blur on my left. Jessica's apartment faded in the rear view, but her voice clung to me. "There's the door. She'd meant it as a taunt, but I'd taken it as a challenge. I found a motel on the edge of town, a rundown place called The Tide's Rest, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. The clerk barely looked up as I handed over $80 for a week's stay. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and damp carpet. But it was ours. No rulers. No smirks. Just a lumpy bed and a promise I'd made to Liam. I unpacked our bags, spreading Liam's markers on the wobbly table to make it feel like home. He sat cross-legged, drawing a new lighthouse, his tongue poking out in concentration. I watched him, my heart aching. How had it come to this a month ago? I'd been hopeful, thinking Jessica's offer was a fresh start after the divorce. Now, I was a fugitive in my own life, hiding from my sister's anger and my mother's indifference. Diane's words haunted me. Family doesn't turn on family. But what about family that hurts you? What about a grandmother who'd rather save her golden child than her grandson? I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Ava's number again. I wanted to call, to spill everything, but shame stopped me. I'd ignored her warnings, and now Liam was the one with scars. Instead, I opened a notebook and started writing. Every detail, the welt on Liam's arm, Jessica's cold justification, Diane's dismissal. I snapped a photo of Liam's bruise, the red fading but still vivid enough to make my stomach churn. This wasn't just about leaving. It was about making sure Jessica couldn't hurt him or anyone again. That afternoon, I walked to a diner down the street, Liam's hand in mine, and asked about jobs. The manager shook her head. No openings. Try the coffee shop on Marine Drive. I thanked her, forcing a smile for Liam, who was coloring on a napkin. We tried the coffee shop, then a bookstore, then a grocery store. Nothing. My resume was a patchwork of odd jobs, and Astoria's small-town economy wasn't hiring. Back at the motel, I counted my cash, $320 left. Enough for another week, maybe 2 if we skipped meals. Panic clawed at me, but I pushed it down. Liam needed me strong, not scared. I tucked him into bed that night, the motel's thin blankets barely keeping out the coastal chill. "Are we gonna be okay, Mommy?" he asked, his voice small, his eyes searching mine. I brushed his hair back, my heart swelling with love and guilt. "We're gonna be better than okay," I said, my voice firm. "I'm gonna make sure of it." He smiled. A flicker of the boy he'd been before Jessica's rage stole his light. As he drifted off, I sat by the window, the ocean's distant roar filling the silence. Leaving was just the start. I had to build something new, something safe for Liam. But first, I had to survive. And survival meant fighting for him, for us, for the future I'd promised. The Tide's Rest motel became our world, its peeling wallpaper and flickering lights, a shaky foundation for the life I was trying to build. Liam's laughter, soft as it was, filled the cramped room as he sprawled on the floor, sketching waves and seagulls with his markers. I watched him, my heart caught between pride and dread. We were free from Jessica's grip, but freedom came with a price $320 in my pocket, a car that rattled like it was on its last breath, and a future as foggy as the Astoria mornings. I hit the ground running, pounding the pavement for work. The coffee shop on Marine Drive hired me for part-time shifts, slinging lattes for tourists who tipped in loose change. At night, I hunched over a borrowed laptop in the motel's dingy lobby, typing up medical records for a remote transcription gig I'd found online. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, snatched in fragments between shifts. Liam slept through most of it, curled up on the motel bed, his triceratops plush tucked under his chin. But even in sleep, he flinched at loud noises, a car backfiring, a door slamming down the hall. Each twitch was a reminder of what Jessica had done, and it fueled me to keep going. I took Liam to a free clinic, where a kind-eyed therapist met with him. "He's showing signs of trauma," she said gently, her words landing like stones. "He needs stability, routine, time to feel safe." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Stability, I was scraping by on $12 an hour and instant noodles. But I painted on a smile for Liam, helped him draw lighthouses on the motel's cheap notepads, and whispered promises of better days. "We're building something new, buddy." I'd say, ruffling his hair. He'd nod, trusting me. And that trust kept me upright. Then the bottom fell out. A week into my coffee shop job, the manager pulled me aside. "I'm sorry." "Sarah," she said, avoiding my eyes. "We got complaints. Some woman called, said you're unstable. We can't keep you." My stomach dropped. I knew that voice behind the complaint, Jessica's venom, reaching across town to choke me. I begged to stay, but the manager's mind was made up. I walked back to the motel, the coastal wind biting my face, and counted my cash again, $150. Enough for one more week, if we stretched it. Panic clawed at my chest, but I wouldn't let Liam see it. He was coloring in the motel Bible, turning psalms into rainbows, and I wouldn't let my fear steal his light. Desperate. I posted Liam's drawings online, hoping to sell a few for grocery money. His lighthouses, with their bold blues and shaky lines, caught the eye of a local art shop owner. "These are special," she messaged, offering $200 for 3 pieces. I stared at the screen, tears blurring the words. Liam's art. His heart on paper had saved us from the edge. We celebrated with a pizza, the first hot meal in days, and Liam grinned, sauce on his chin. "Did I do good, Mommy?" he asked. I hugged him tight, my voice breaking. "You did amazing, baby." For a moment, the motel's grim walls faded, and I saw a flicker of hope. But hope was fragile. Bills piled up: motel rent, gas, Liam's markers. The transcription gig paid late, and my car's battery died, eating another $100. I started skipping breakfast, telling Liam I wasn't hungry. He didn't buy it, his big eyes watching me too closely. One night, he pushed his half-eaten apple toward me. "You need it more, Mommy," he said, and I nearly broke. I was failing him. Wasn't I running from Jessica, only to crash into a different kind of trap poverty, exhaustion, fear? I sat in the motel lobby after Liam fell asleep, the ancient computer humming as I typed transcripts through bleary eyes. My notebook lay open beside me, filled with evidence against Jessica photos, notes, that welt on Liam's arm. I hadn't reported her yet, too scared of what Diane might do, what Jessica might say to twist the truth. But as I watched Liam sleep, his small hand clutching his triceratops, I knew running wasn't enough. We couldn't just survive. We had to fight. For Liam's safety, for his future, for the boy who deserved to draw lighthouses without fear. The ocean roared outside, a steady pulse, and I felt it in my bones. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The motel room felt smaller each day, its damp walls closing in as I counted our last $50. Liam's latest drawing, a lighthouse beaming through a storm, hung taped to the mirror. A fragile reminder of why I kept fighting. I was bone-tired, juggling transcription work and endless job applications. But Liam's quiet resilience, his small hand slipping into mine, pushed me forward. I couldn't let him down again. Not after Jessica's ruler. Not after Diane's betrayal. But the fight was about to get harder, and it started with a call from Ava. I'd finally worked up the nerve to text her, spilling the truth about Jessica's attack on Liam. My phone buzzed late that night, Ava's name lighting up the screen. "Sarah, I dug into Jessica's past," she said, her voice tight. "It's worse than you think. When she was teaching, a parent reported her for grabbing a kid's arm hard enough to bruise. The school hushed it up, and Diane paid the family to drop it. She's done this before." My stomach twisted, the room spinning. Jessica wasn't just a bully. She was a pattern, a predator hiding behind her polished smile, and Liam had been her target. I clutched Liam's dinosaur blanket, my hands shaking. "Why didn't anyone stop her?" I whispered. Ava's sigh carried years of frustration. Money, connections. Diane's good at cleaning up messes. "But Sarah, you can stop her. Report this. Now." Her words lit a fire in me, burning through the fear. I'd been running, hiding, hoping Jessica would just disappear. But Ava was right. If I didn't act, Liam wouldn't be her last victim. The next morning, I met Daniel Brooks, a CPS worker with kind eyes and a clipboard full of questions. In the motel's cramped lobby, with Liam coloring nearby, I handed over everything: photos of Liam's welt, my notebook of timestamps, recordings of Diane's dismissive calls. Daniel's face grew grim as he flipped through the evidence. "This is serious," he said, his voice low. "And you're not the only one. We got an anonymous tip about Jessica last week. Another kid. Another accident." My heart pounded. Another child. How many had Jessica hurt while Diane looked the other way? I nodded, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I want to file a formal complaint, whatever it takes to keep Liam safe." Daniel jotted notes, promising to escalate the case. As he left, I felt a shift, like the tide turning. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about every kid Jessica had scarred, every parent silenced by shame or money. I wouldn't let her win. Jessica didn't take long to strike back. That night, an email pinged into my inbox, her name glaring in bold. "Sarah, I'm sorry it got out of hand," she wrote, her words dripping with fake remorse. "You know how stressful my life is. Don't ruin me over one mistake." I laughed, bitter and cold. One mistake she'd built a career on mistakes, and I wasn't buying her act. I forwarded the email to Daniel, my fingers steady now, fueled by a rage I hadn't known I had. Then the threat started. Texts from unknown numbers, short and sharp. "Back off, or you'll regret it. You're nothing without us." I knew Jessica's hand was behind them, her desperation seeping through the words. My hands shook as I showed Ava, who cursed under her breath. "She's scared. Sarah, you've got her cornered. Keep going." Ava helped me file a police report, her legal jargon a lifeline in the chaos. I changed my number, locked the motel door twice, and checked on Liam every hour, his sleeping face a reminder of what was at stake. Each night, I sat by the window, the ocean's roar a steady pulse against my fear. I wasn't just fighting for Liam now. I was fighting for the kid Jessica had bruised years ago, for the anonymous tipster who dared to speak. I added her email to my evidence folder. Every word another nail in her coffin. Jessica thought she could scare me into silence, like she'd scared me as a kid. But I wasn't that little sister anymore. I was Liam's mother, and I'd burn her world down before I let her touch him again. The fight was on, and I was ready. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, its high ceilings amplifying every whisper. I sat in the front row, my hands clasped tight to hide their trembling. Liam's lighthouse drawing folded in my pocket like a talisman. Across the room, Jessica sat ramrod straight, her pearls gleaming, her face a mask of practiced innocence. Diane was behind her, arms crossed, her glare boring into me like I was the traitor. But I wasn't here for them. I was here for Liam, for the welt on his arm, for every child Jessica had hurt and thought she'd buried. Today, the truth would speak. The judge, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, called the hearing to order. My advocate, Ava, stood beside me, her sharp suit a contrast to my thrift store blouse. She'd prepped me for weeks, drilling me on every detail, every photo, every recorded word, but nothing prepared me for Jessica's performance. When her lawyer called her to the stand, she dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her voice soft and shaky. "I never meant to hurt Liam," she said, tears glistening. "I was just trying to help my sister, to teach him right from wrong. Sarah's always been emotional. She misunderstood." The word landed like a slap, twisting my pain into a lie. I gripped Ava's hand, my nails digging into her palm. "She's good," Ava whispered, her voice steady. "But we're better." When it was my turn, I took the stand, my heart hammering, but my eyes locked on the judge. I told the truth, how Liam's scream had shattered my world, how Jessica's ruler left a mark that still haunted his dreams. I showed the photos, the angry red welt on his small arm, and played Diane's recorded voice dismissing it all. "Jessica's not perfect. Sarah, don't make a mountain out of a molehill." The courtroom went quiet, the weight of Diane's words hanging heavy. Ava called Liam's pediatrician, who testified the welt wasn't accidental. The force required would have been deliberate, he said, his voice clinical but damning. Jessica's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming Liam was clumsy, but the judge's frown deepened. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. Ava called a surprise witness, a woman named Karen, her face lined with grief and resolve. "My daughter was in Jessica's class 8 years ago," Karen said, her voice trembling. Jessica grabbed her arm, left bruises. We reported it, but Diane paid us to stay quiet. I regret it every day. Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's mask slipped, her eyes wide with panic. Diane shifted in her seat, her face pale. I stared at her. The mother who'd chosen Jessica over me, over Liam, over Karen's daughter. How many others had she silenced? The judge's gavel cracked, pulling me back. Ava submitted my evidence, Jessica's fake apology email, the threatening texts, my notebook of every cruel word. The prosecutor laid out the pattern, Jessica's history of violence, covered up by money and lies. I held my breath, the room spinning, as the judge reviewed the file. When she spoke, her voice was steel. "Ms. Harper, your actions constitute child endangerment. A restraining order is hereby issued. You are prohibited from contact with Liam Coleman, and this case will be reported to the Oregon Board of Education for review of your professional conduct." Jessica's sob broke the silence, but it wasn't remorse. It was defeat. Her lawyer scrambled, but the judge waved him off. "This court is adjourned." I exhaled, my legs weak, as Ava squeezed my shoulder. "You did it, Sarah," she whispered. "You won, outside." Liam waited with a CPS volunteer, his sketchbook clutched tight. I knelt, pulling him into my arms, his small body warm against mine. "Is it over, Mommy?" he asked, his eyes searching. "It's over, baby," I said, my voice thick. "She can't hurt you anymore." Diane stormed past, her heels clicking, not sparing me a glance. Jessica lingered, her face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this." "Sarah," she spat, her voice raw. I stood, shielding Liam, and met her eyes. "No, Jessica, you will." She turned away, her pearls catching the light, a fading symbol of her crumbling world. As we walked to the car, The Oregon rain misted my face, cool and cleansing. The weight I'd carried, fear, shame, doubt lifted, replaced by something new, strength. Liam's hand in mine felt like a promise kept. We'd faced the fire and come out whole, not unscathed, but unbroken. The fight had changed me, carved a new path, and I wasn't done yet. For Liam, for Karen's daughter, for every silenced voice. I'd keep going. The ocean roared in the distance, and I knew this was our victory, and it was just the start. 3 years passed like waves smoothing sharp rocks, each day a step away from the darkness of Jessica's apartment. Liam and I had a new home now, a small apartment in downtown Astoria, its walls painted soft blue to match his lighthouses. The place wasn't perfect leaky faucet, creaky floors, but it was ours. Liam's laughter filled it, bright and fearless, as he hung his latest drawing above the couch, a seagull soaring over the Pacific. I watched him, my heart swelling. The boy who'd once flinched at loud noises was gone. In his place was my son, whole again, his smile a light I'd fought to protect. Mornings were ours now. I'd braid Liam's hair for school, his chatter about art class drowning out the coastal wind rattling our windows. He'd started first grade at a new school, one with teachers who praised his creativity, not his obedience. The nightmares had faded, though sometimes, when a belt snapped on TV, his eyes would flicker, a shadow of the past. I'd pull him close, whispering, "You're safe, buddy," until the tension left his shoulders. Healing wasn't a straight line, but we were finding our way. My life had changed too. The courtroom victory sparked something bigger than I'd imagined. A local nonprofit, drawn to our story, offered me a job coordinating support for families escaping abuse. I said yes, trading coffee shop shifts for a desk where I could make a difference. The work was hard, late nights, heavy stories, but it felt right, like I was turning my pain into purpose. One day, inspired by Liam's resilience, I pitched an idea, a resource center for kids to report violence safely, anonymously. No fear of retaliation. They loved it. We called it Liam's Light, a beacon for those lost in the dark. The center grew fast. We set up a hotline, partnered with schools, trained counselors to listen without judgment. Parents called, their voices shaky, grateful. Kids wrote letters, their words raw but hopeful. Each one felt like a brick in the foundation we were building. Liam's drawings hung in the office, his lighthouses guiding the way. He'd beam when I told him, "Your art's helping people." Buddy, at 7. He was already leaving a mark on the world. Jessica tried to creep back once. A letter arrived, her handwriting sharp on the envelope. "I'm sorry, Sarah," it read, her words polished but hollow. "I've lost so much. Can't we move past this?" I read it twice, my stomach churning. She hadn't changed. She was still playing the victim, dodging the truth. I wrote back, one line. My pen steady. "Sorry doesn't erase scars." I mailed it, no return address, and felt a weight lift. She wasn't my burden anymore. Diane showed up unannounced at Liam's Light one afternoon, her designer scarf out of place among the office's mismatched chairs. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice clipped, like she still had authority. I kept working, sorting files. My calm a shield. "I'm busy, Mom." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp. "Jessica's struggling. No job, no friends. You did this to her." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "No. She did this to herself. And you let her." Diane's face twisted, but I didn't flinch. "Liam deserves better than your excuses." I said, So do I. She left without another word, her shadow smaller than I'd ever seen. The city granted Liam's light funding for a new space, a milestone we celebrated with a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Liam, in a tiny navy blazer, held the oversized scissors, his grin lighting up the crowd. I stood beside him, my voice steady as I thanked our supporters, the people who'd believed in second chances, in justice, in us. The ocean breeze carried my words, and I felt it pride, fierce and unbroken. Liam squeezed my hand, whispering, "We did good, Mommy?" I knelt, hugging him tight. "We did great, baby." As the crowd clapped, I looked out at Astoria's skyline, the Pacific stretching endless and free. We'd built something stronger than Jessica's cruelty, brighter than Diane's denial. Liam's light wasn't just a center, it was proof that pain could spark change, that love could outlast fear. Liam's laughter rang out, mingling with the waves, and I knew we weren't just surviving, we were thriving. And that was enough, for now, for always. The spring sun hung low over Astoria, painting the Pacific in hues of gold and crimson. I stood on a small stage outside the new Liam's Light Center, the ribbon-cutting crowd buzzing with warmth and applause. Liam bounced beside me, his navy blazer slightly crooked, his grin wide enough to rival the horizon. The mayor handed me a plaque, her smile genuine, but my eyes drifted to the faces in the crowd, parents, kids, survivors, all here because of a fight that started with a scream in Jessica's kitchen. I gripped the microphone, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "I used to think family was everything," I said, pausing as the ocean sighed in the distance. "But I learned family isn't blood. It's the people who lift you up, who protect you, not the ones who leave scars." The words poured out, raw and true. I told them about Liam's welt, Jessica's ruler, Diane's cold dismissal. I spoke of motel nights and empty wallets, of Ava's fierce support and Daniel's quiet resolve. I shared how Liam's lighthouses, scribbled in fear, became beacons for others. The crowd leaned in, some wiping tears, others nodding, their own stories mirrored in mine. "Justice isn't just punishment," I said, my gaze sweeping over them. "It's building something better. Liam's light is that better. It's a safe place for every kid who's ever been told their pain doesn't matter." Applause erupted, and Liam tugged my hand, whispering, "You're doing good, Mommy." I ruffled his hair, my heart full. This wasn't just a ceremony. It was a promise kept. Liam's light had grown beyond my dreams. Hotlines answered round the clock, counselors in schools, kids finding courage to speak. One letter, from a girl named Mia, stuck with me. "I told my teacher because of you." She wrote, "I'm not scared anymore." I carried her words like armor, proof that our fight mattered. Liam's drawings still hung in the center, his art a quiet force, guiding others to shore. I scanned the crowd one last time, and there she was, Diane, alone in the back, her face unreadable. No Jessica, no entourage, just a woman diminished by her choices. She didn't wave, didn't approach. I didn't invite her, but I didn't stop her either. This day wasn't about her. It was about Liam, who laughed without fear now. It was about Mia, about every child who'd been silenced. I turned away, focusing on the mayor's closing words, the crowd's cheers. Diane was the past. We were the future. As the event ended, Liam and I walked to the cliffside, the ocean stretching endless before us. He clutched a new sketch, a lighthouse glowing against a stormy sky. "For you, Mommy," he said, his eyes bright. I hugged him close, the salt air cool on my face. "You're my light, buddy," I whispered. We stood there, the waves crashing below, and I felt at peace, hard-won and unshakable. We'd survived the fire, and we'd built something stronger than Jessica's cruelty, brighter than Diane's denial, a legacy, a voice, a home. Here's what I learned. What I want you to carry with you. Listen to kids when they say they're scared. Their words are a lifeline. Set boundaries with toxic family, because love shouldn't hurt. Seek help, whether it's a friend, a hotline, or a stranger with a kind heart. You're never alone. And turn pain into power, like we did with Liam's light, using your story to light someone else's way. These aren't just lessons. They're tools to build a life where fear doesn't win. I took Liam's hand, his small fingers warm in mine, and we headed home. The sunset blazed, a fire that didn't burn but warmed. I'd fought for my son, for myself, for every silenced voice. And in that fight, I found my strength. "We made it, baby," I said, my voice soft but sure. Liam grinned, his lighthouse sketch fluttering in the breeze. We had, and that was everything.